Hello, welcome back to this video. Hello, welcome back to Bridge After School. My name is Sarisha and I'm here to teach you something. Today we are going to be doing some of the basics of embroidery, learning how to do some of the basic stitches, and yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. Before we begin, make sure that you're subscribed. If you're not subscribed, why not? Every week we put out either a crafting or a microwave cooking video. We also are always open to suggestions. If there's something that you want me to do, for me to cover, please let me know and I can cover it. You can contact us via Facebook, Instagram, all of that will be in the description below. But yeah, today we are going to be doing some embroidery, so stick around for that. Yeah. Before we do that, as you know, or you should know if you've been watching these past couple of weeks, I always do a word of the day before I do anything else. And today's word of the day is era. Era is a noun and era is a noun and it is a long or distinct period of time, usually with a specific characteristic, something that kind of marks that time period. So I'm sure in school you learned about the Great Depression. That was a not very good era, or the industrial era when machines and stuff kind of popped up. We are currently in the era of TikTok. No, I don't know. Maybe that's what's going to define this era. Who knows? But those are all examples of the way that you can use the word era, and make sure that you're using new words every day. That's why I provide them to you every single week. Before we move on to anything else, I always like to give you a little something about myself, a little fun fact, or I like to tell you about Bridge. One of the things that I definitely miss about Bridge in person is just seeing all your faces. It's so nice to check in, know how you're all doing, and if you're not from Bridge, hello, hi. But if you are from Bridge and you are watching, or you're from San Jose Middle School, or you graduated, I just miss seeing your face. So yeah, this is the next best thing. Okay, well, let's get into some crafting. We are going to go over some of the basic stitches that you might find with embroidery. They, are similar to some that you might do when you just begin hand sewing. So these are, really good tools kind of to have in your back pocket, or things that you can know. And so today, because we're just going to do the very basic stitches, I can do a video later on, maybe in a couple weeks, that goes over some of the more detailed things, like actually putting these stitches into, a piece that you're going to wear or you're going to put on your wall. But today we are going to just really focus on the basics. Right. So for the basic things, you are going to need a needle. Embroidery needles are a little bit thicker, and they have a larger eye. So that little part that you put the string in is called the eye. They're a little bit thicker of a needle. The eye is a little bit bigger because the string is bigger than, say, a regular sewing needle. I'm honestly not sure where I got these, but I bought a basic embroidery kit on Amazon, and it came with some needles, so you can use those. You're gonna need some kind of scissors to cut your string, and then you are going to need embroidery floss or string. And for this specific thing, we're actually going to use just like a regular plate. I found that when you're practicing, using a plate is really good, just to kind of get the basics. You can also use like a regular canvas if you want to play with that, because it's already structured, it's already pulled for you, and you're not really having to worry about holding the fabric.
Normally you would use an embroidery hoop shown here, but we are going to use a paper plate because it's just so much easier. And I will in a future video be showing you how to use an embroidery hoop. And then here are two examples of works of art that I have done on just really basic canvases that I got at the craft store.
Before we get into any of the actual stitches, I just want to go over two things. One thing is, how do you tie a knot in your string? Because with sewing, you usually, double your thread. With embroidery, you don't double your thread. Embroidery thread is typically 6 threads wound together. Sometimes when you're making things, a pattern will call for a smaller amount of thread, so you'll actually split your thread. But today we'll just focus on straight from what you buy. I've wrapped these. I actually bought, as you can see, I have a lot of thread. So I actually bought things that I ended up wrapping, but the regular embroidery that you buy, I'll put a picture up here. That is just start with that basic, and you don't have to worry about splitting strings or anything like that. So the first thing that you can do, so there's 2 different ways that you can tie your embroidery thread. You can make a knot before you even start, or once you begin, you can actually make a knot on the actual piece. So I'll show you both ways. And the easiest way that I have found just to make a knot, separate from what you're making, is to take the end of the string. So you are going to wrap it around your finger. You're going to twist, and you are going to pull. And you see how I made a knot. And that's really easy, and I would just cut off the end of the thread here. You're ready to go. And then you would thread the string through the needle, through the eye of the needle, and you are just gonna leave a little piece down so that the thread doesn't go back through the needle, but you're not going to pull the other side down all the way. You're just gonna kind of leave it out like this, and then you are ready to start. The other way that you can do it, so we go through, and then we're gonna hold this piece here so it doesn't go all the way through. We're gonna do our second stitch. I'm gonna pull it through, and now you have 2 strings that you can tie together to make a little knot. All right, so I've pulled you in close because I want you to really be able to see what I'm about to do. What you're gonna do is you're gonna wanna take your needle, and you're gonna want, after you draw a line, this will just help you as a guide. So you draw a line, and you can use your needle to kind of punch out where your stitches are gonna be. And you can see that some of them are closer than others, and we'll go over why that might be. But just to start, we're gonna start with the back stitch. And for the back stitch, you're just gonna wanna have about even spacing between each stitch. So I'll finish the line, and then we'll go over how to actually do it. Okay, so we're going to take our string, and I'm going to put it through the back of my plate, and this is where the holes go in. So you can actually bring it up and look and see where the hole is, so that you know that you're gonna be along that straight line. And then I'm going to put it into the second hole right next to us. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we're going to do is I'm going to look at the back again, and I'm going to put it in, I'm gonna pull it out through that next hole. And it's called the back stitch because you're going backwards. So then I'm going to go back, and I'm gonna put it into the same hole that I had come out of, or that I had gone into before. So let me show you that again. out. And then go back through that same hole. So this is called a backstitch. When you're using fabric, sometimes you can see through the fabric, so you can actually see the line that you're making. And in that case, you probably wouldn't need to make holes beforehand. But when you're using something thicker, like a canvas or a plate, it's much easier to have the holes pre-made. And then you're just done. And then at the end, you can flip it around. This is what it looks like at the bottom, at the back, sorry. Flip it around, and I just went under one of the loops, and then you go through the loop and you make a little knot. And then you're done. All right, now we're gonna do the running stitch, which is similar to the back stitch, but it's gonna actually leave some spaces, but it's a similar idea. So I'm gonna just punch my holes, and then I'm gonna start in the same way. I have a little knot at the end of my string. I'm gonna go through the back, come out the front, and then I'm gonna go through the next hole. Come back through on the back side. So this is what it looks like on the back. We're gonna go back through this hole, comes out in the front. And instead of going back, doing a back stitch, I'm just going to go to the next hole. So there actually will be a little space between each stitch. Basic sewing stitch, the running stitch. And if this was on fabric and you were to pull, the fabric would actually gather together. And then the same thing in the back. I'm going to go through here and then tighten it up, make a little knot. And you can make one more for good luck. Go through the hole and you're all good to go. And you can cut it off. We're gonna do the split stitch, and you see how the holes are a little bit closer together, and that is because we are actually going to be going back through the middle of our stitch. So you want the stitches to be very similar, you know, size in the way that you have the running stitch or the back stitch, but then you're gonna want a little hole in between the middle of that stitch. So I'm going to punch it out a little bit more. Regular stitch, hole in the middle. And again, I'm just punching them out because I find that when I'm practicing, especially on something solid like a piece of paper or a plate in this case, it's just so much easier to have the holes already there, especially if I want to make sure that everything is in a very straight line. So same deal, I'm going to come out the front and then I'm going to skip this hole and go to the next one. And then on the back, I am going to go into that hole that I skipped. And that's going to bring me out right in the middle of the stitch that I had previously made. And you want to make, because like I said before, there's 6 strings, 6 threads. And so you want to kind of have it in the middle, try to get 3 on each side to really make it look uniform. So again, I'm going to skip this one, and then I'm going to go to the next one. And then I'm going to go to the back, and I'm going to go through that hole that I skipped. Make sure, see how I came out the front and I'm not in the middle? You want to make sure that you're in the middle of that stitch. And that is why this is called a split stitch, because you're actually physically splitting the stitch. each time. And these are really pretty for letters, or if you want to make something that's kind of curved, it's really easy to make it look really good. My last one, so I'll go back down through, and then I will go through this little stitch right next to it, and that is the split stitch. All right, now we are going to do the stem stitch, which is similar to the split stitch, just a little bit different, but it's similar in that you are going to want to make holes that are 1 stitch wide and then half that. So I'll just do that now. And again, these are just guides. As you might have seen, sometimes I struggle to get the needle actually through this. That's totally okay. This is just so that I can stay on a straight line. So we're gonna start how we've started every other one. We're gonna go through the back. I'm gonna pull it out the front. And we are going to do what we did similarly with the split stitch. We are going to skip one of the holes and we're gonna go to the next hole. But instead of going back through the middle of the actual stitch, we are going to pull this. We're gonna leave a little bit of room. We are going to go back through that hole in the middle, and we are going to keep the string on the bottom. So you can do it on the bottom or the top, but you want to make sure that it is even all the way through. So we're going to go back through. I'll show you that a couple more times. We're going to go back through. I'm going to hold this down so it doesn't get in the way. I'm going to go back through the hole in the middle, and then I'm going to pull it out. So I'm going to just keep doing that, and you can kind of see the pattern that emerges. So this is my last hole. So I'm coming up in the middle of a stitch. Instead of doing a full stitch length, I'm just going to do a half stitch, go through, and then tie it in the back, cut. And that is the stem stitch. Next up is the chain stitch. I'm going to just use the same green thread, and you are going to make just regular stitch holes. So not halves, full stitch holes. All right, so we are going to start like we start everyone. We're going to go through that first loop, or first hole, sorry. Gonna pull, and then you're gonna go back through that exact same hole. And you're gonna wanna make sure that you hold on to this little loop that forms, because if you don't and you pull it through, that's what happens. It just comes out. So you wanna make sure that you have a hold on the little loop that is going to form, and you don't want to lose that. So you're gonna have it over the next stitch, kind of, you can put the loop over your line, and then you're gonna come up right through that loop. You're gonna pull, and then you're going to go back again right through that same hole. And what this is going to do, it's called a chain stitch because it kind of looks like a chain of little loops. So through, you're gonna pull, and you're gonna go, make sure you're going back inside the loop, inside the hole, like this, pull it over.
And a lot of these stitches are they just become muscle memory. And that's why practicing on something like a plate is really nice, because you can get really good at just the technical aspect of it before you start trying to embroider anything. And then for the last one, I'm just gonna put my stitch right at the edge, right outside of the loop, and pull it through, just locking everything right in place. So we are on our final one, the blanket stitch. So this one, you are going to start with the regular stitch, and then you are going to put 2 holes, one on top of each other. So you're gonna do the regular stitch and then 1 hole right on top. And we're gonna end with 1 hole all on its own, just like at the beginning. So let's start. You are going to, instead of going to the hole right next to it, you're going to actually go diagonally from that initial hole. So I'm going to go diagonally, and then as you can see, it's a little loop, and I'm going to go back up through and through the loop. You can see it makes like a little L shape. Well, I can do it this way too. So diagonal from here, from this first thing, diagonally. You have the little loop. Then you're gonna go back through the hole at the bottom, through the loop, and pull. Pretty as like a decoration on the edge of something. It's great for edges. And the reason I'm struggling is because the holes aren't exactly the same width as the needle plus the string. So I'm kind of having to pull it through a little bit harder than I might if it was just regular fabric. But again, I think that it's really helpful to start with a stiff material like a plate, and it's really easy to hold. So it's nice to just have, and then you're not wasting fabric or canvas or something like that by just on your practicing. So we're basically at the end, and we're just going to then go through that last stitch and turn it over and make a knot. So these are all the basic stitches that you can do. This is a great place to start, a great place to practice. And let me just show you. You can use all those stitches to make something like this, or you think you've seen on my walls behind me in my intros. I have some embroidery that I do. You can also embroider a jacket. I got this from Goodwill, and then I've been embroidering it. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can do once you learn the basic stitches of embroidery. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the adventure of learning some of the basics of embroidery. Again, these are some basics that you can also use for regular sewing, but you know, they're embroidery basics. And again, let me know if you want to see more, if you want to have a more in-depth, how do I make some of the artwork that I do make with embroidery. Let me know in the comments below. And until then,
Make sure that you wash your hands, clean up after yourself, and take a sip of water. Bye.